Check this out. It is August 14th, 2003, and 50 million people are in the dark. This blackout made it look straight up apocalyptic. While hundreds of people walked the freeways in New York and Canada, in Metro Detroit, our own Amy Lang was reporting at a frantic gas station. Hill Perkins and Alan Lee went jackets off to provide updates in a darker than usual newsroom. And would you believe the largest blackout in North American history, second largest in world history, happened because a tree brushed up against a high-velocity power line. What up, though? Welcome to From the TV-2 Archives. I am Brandon Hudson, and we are talking about the 2003 blackout. Now, joining me for this episode, I got former Fox 2 morning anchor, Alan Lee. Alan, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
And the guy that makes me look good on a regular basis, Fox 2 photojournalist, Marcus Myers. Marcus, how you doing, man?
Good.
Hey, look, so you can catch this episode streaming on our Fox local channel. You can also see it on YouTube. We put the link up shortly after it airs, so be sure to see it there. But we are talking about something that happened, 22 years ago? Does it feel like it's been 22 years?
No?
Not at all.
Look, I appreciate you guys joining me here. This was something that was brought to my attention actually by your wife, Alan.
Okay.
Sean Lee. She said, she said she was pregnant at the time.
Yes.
So we can jump right into this. So you're an expecting dad.
Yeah.
Explain what was going on in that whole situation.
The crazy thing about that we can both remember about that episode was she was pregnant with our second kid, and it was gonna be a guy's weekend with me and my other son. We were going on the train, Amtrak, to Chicago. And she's giving us our blessings. Yep, you guys get away. We were like, honey, you going to be okay. There's no power. It's hot. And she goes, no, the trains are running. You guys go to Chicago like you planned. Have a good time. We're on the train, and we're heading to Chicago. And I'm checking in with her. How you doing? She's got the fans on. I'm doing fine. She's pregnant. I'm like, what am I doing? And my son's having the greatest time in the world. He's going to Chicago with me. It's a guy's weekend. And we got to Battle Creek. And when we hit Battle Creek, the power was out then on the train, on the track. They couldn't.
Wow.
And so we're like stuck in Battle Creek for hours upon hours. And I'm calling her, and she goes, how's the trip going? I'm going like, horrible. We're now in Battle Creek, Michigan, and we're not moving. And they have no idea what's going to happen, no information. And Amtrak finally said, look, we're going to have some buses get here in a couple of hours to take you guys hopefully to a hotel or to another place. And my wife's like, well, I can just come get you guys. I'm like, honey, you're pregnant. I'm not going to have you drive from Metro Detroit all the way to Battle Creek.
Hours.
Just to pick us up and bring, to come back home. And I'm asking my son, though, he's really young at that point in time. I'm like, well, do you want mom to come pick us up? And he's like having the best time of his life. And I couldn't understand it. He thinks this is a great adventure. I'm like, no, I don't want to stay here. By this time, Amtrak had run out of food because we're on the run out of food. Bathrooms are to smell because, people, and I'm like, son, we can just go back. And he goes, no, tell mom don't come. I want to keep going. We're going to get to Chicago eventually. And sure enough, we did. It was like, I think we were supposed to get there like at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or something like that. Wound up getting in Chicago like about 11 o'clock at night. So that was my memory of that whole episode. Of just, obviously it was something that the news and everything else, but the power being out. But that particular thing sort of cements it in my head.
Marcus, where were you when this blackout happened?
Well, you said I was with Amy. But we started out as we were in the station. I was in the station working. And as you know, inside the edit area, there are no windows. So we got a little brownout. Boom, So, immediately I'm saying Control S on your computers to save all that data. And next thing you know, all the power goes out. And because the newsroom has no windows, it's black. And so then the emergency lights finally kicked on. And so then I go to the desk. I'm like, okay, I know you want me in the street now. So they say, you and Amy go to the airport. So from the apron or the driveway of the driveway to the station, which is on 9 Mile, it took 1 hour to drive 1 mile away from here to the Shell gas station at 8 Mile in Southfield. So you say, well, why did it take so long to drive 1 mile? That's because you can imagine people they only have enough gas in their cars because they're driving. You know where we sit. We sit between two large gas stations. Right. So people are just assuming that, I'll get off work, I'll go fill up big gas. Well, their cars are stopping in the middle of the street. There are women are crying. And then there are people hanging off the truck going, Al-Qaeda. This is after 9/11. So there's Al-Qaeda. I'm like, look, we're trying to get to the airport. So we finally called back to the station and said, look, we're not going to make it. We're just going to post up at this gas station, and we will transmit until when the live truck runs out of gas, we can't transmit anymore. So we stayed at that gas station, and it was, man, we're helping people push cars up in there. Women are crying, and, you can't get any ATM money to pay. And so while we're in the parking lot, some people it turned into a problem solver. Some people came up and said, well, the food land down the street, they're price gouging us. They're charging $10 a bottle for a bottle of water. And we're like, what? So we drop the mask. We go down just maybe a half mile down the road. So we pull up, and it's people lined up. And the guys are like, oh, no, we weren't charging people this. And they're giving us water and all of this stuff, man. And people, we're so thankful that you came. And it wasn't until it got dark that you start to realize, with no electricity, even in a major city, how velvety dark it is. I mean, there was no lights anywhere. And we're driving down streets trying to do our stories and stuff. And it was just, if you've ever been on a cruise ship, and you ever go on a cruise ship at night, and you go out on the deck, and you know how the darkness is basically right up against the boat, that's how dark it was. It was the most surreal experience. I had never experienced anything like that in my life.
How long of a shift was that day?
Oh, man, we worked till I think it was 1, almost 2 in the morning or something like that. It was and we ended up at Como's over in Royal Oak, and they were making pizza for us because they got the wood-fired stove, and they were just throwing wood in there, and we went out, and we couldn't go live anymore because by that time we didn't have gas enough to run the mast. And we did a story from there just for the next morning, but it was completely crazy.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this isn't like April where it's like 70 degrees. I'll say it was hot during the day, and that didn't go anywhere at night. So you, like I said, you couldn't use fans. It was old school back in the '60s. Doing this kind of thing with paper or magazine. It was hot.
And hopefully you had water, you got lucky, if you still had water in your tank at home, then you could go home. I took a cold shower because you couldn't take a hot shower, but it was the best feeling because it was sticky hot. Yeah. It was like the wrong time of year to lose power, but it was to this day I've experienced nothing like that.
So blackout impacted 50 million people all across the country and in North America and Canada. 8 states, Ontario was impacted. We're talking Detroit, New York City, Cleveland, Pittsburgh. There was video where we had Huel with his sleeves rolled up in the newsroom. There's video of you in the newsroom. What was the situation? So you get back from Chicago when, at what point, and what time do you go back into the station?
Oh, obviously, but it was only like a weekend trip in Chicago, so I had to come back obviously Sunday night. So got back and had to go back and do the same thing. I can't remember when it actually went out, whether it went out that day, that morning, and we had to do the newscast in the dark then, or what that situation was, or if it happened later when I got home. But I remember it was one of those things so obviously we don't have any power, so where we got to go to do this, and it was, forget teleprompter and all that stuff. You just have to ad lib everything, and which was really kind of like the best newscast. If you've ever been in that situation, because everything else is sort of scripted in some respect, you're reading stuff. But when you have to do stuff kind of off the cuff, I prefer that. I enjoy that more because it's more real to me. You're really reacting to everything that's going on. You're hearing reports. You're hearing people tell you this, and you're experiencing it, something like that. A lot of times when we do the news, and Marcus can say the same because he goes and shoots the stories, you don't really experience what other people are experiencing because you're covering it. So those are their experiences that you're bringing to everyone else. But when you have this shared thing, we don't have power either. I understand what you're going through. I really do understand that brings a little bit more empathy and sympathy, I think, all around the board because you're really in that then with everybody else. So when we had to do newscasts in the dark, we had to rely on this or that, and you're sweating, and like everybody else, your makeup. You're like, oh, come on, that's just
You leave the makeup at home.
powder. That stuff's just running anyway.
Were you guys on set, or were we still in the parking lot doing it?
I think we obviously started on the set, and then
Okay.
we had to vacate that.
Yeah.
We had to get out of there too. So.
Yeah, we had to plug up live trucks, and once the power went out, we were doing the newscast from the parking lot with live trucks. It got hairy, man.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, I was just about to ask you, Alan. Usually, when breaking news happens, we're gonna rush there. It doesn't usually happen and impact us first,
Right.
and then we're going out there. But give us a sense for both of you when you're working in these kind of situations where it feels like all heck is breaking loose. What's the atmosphere in the newsroom, and how do people change and kind of go into fight mode?
I think you deal with everybody's personality is a little different, which is a good thing because you sort of sometimes know who you're more level. Not too much is going to get to some people situations. Other people are kind of like a little frantic, and depending upon, like you said, you don't know if your kids are doing there are things you have to worry about outside of your job while still doing your job. But I think that it's that situation where, like you said, all hands on deck at that point in time. There are no egos at that point in time. Everybody's kind of like wants to contribute. Everybody understands if somebody, back then raised the voice a little bit about something or a little displeasure about this or that. You kind of just let it go and you understand it. But I think everybody was really helpful in that manner. Nobody. Sometimes when you've been here all day, you kind of like. Home. I've been here for 10 hours already. I'm hungry. I want to get. I'm tired of looking at you people. I want to go home. That situation doesn't really happen sometimes. In that situation, everybody's just really kind of your adrenaline is going. Like Marcus said, he was working till 1, 2 in the morning. You don't really. You're tired, but you don't. You still got energy. You're pumped,
right?
Because you're getting good stories. You're doing something really good and beneficial.
For some people, I always say, time is time. So you can spend that second frantic, or you can spend it calm. But time is time. It doesn't slow down because you're being frantic. So it's better to be clear of mind when you have that. Like when the power first goes out, you're just thinking, go to this place, go to this place, and we're not thinking, well, the airport has underground tanks that's going to keep running. Those planes are going to land. There was no way we were going to make it there. Right. Because there were cars on the freeway stopped. All the major arteries were clogged. And you start to think to yourself how just losing a little bit of power for, like a day and a half or something like that, it seemed like a whole week. It was complete chaos. And you start to think, boy, it just takes a little bit for us to get unraveled. So in the midst of that unraveling, we have to be calm so that people on the air can get the information as long as we can be on the air.
Yeah. So at what point did you two realize this wasn't just a Metro Detroit thing? This was, 8 states. This was Canada. This was a really big deal.
I think it was when you start to hear those reports, because usually when you have a huge power outage, you'll get help from other states. Like, well, they're going to send so-and-so in here to help you. I'd be like, well, they can't send so-and-so because they don't have any power either. Right. They don't have any power either. You start, so how does this work? How can we connect to, can we get some power from over there because they're not out? How does that system work? You really kind of have to be educated on that as well because like at home, can't you just plug in the extension cord and
or just go to the fuse box, cut the fuse box off, then cut it back on.
Well, they had power in Brighton.
Oh, did they?
Yeah. Brighton had power, so that's where we were trucking gas in and out from Brighton all the way here just to stay on the air and to keep our trucks running. So
you wonder how that grid works, and the biggest thing is then you start wondering, okay, how long is this going to last? Because people are like, I got necessities, I need to go to the store, or everything is out, can't go to a restaurant, they can't cook food, grocery stores are all hit, and where they're going to keep it, you can't buy milk or that kind of stuff because you don't know if you can keep it or not. So it's one of those. It was tricky.
But you also have lessons you have to learn from that. You have to learn that, you know what? Well, maybe somewhere in the house I got to have hard currency.
Right.
Because ATMs aren't going to work and people aren't going to take your faith that, hey, I need cash money, because people were freaking out and screaming. I mean, you couldn't buy anything. So what happens if you don't have hard currency? If you don't have, stash some money in the house just for, and I say that and I put money aside. And then I got too lazy one day to go to the ATM. I could take some of that, and I never put it back. So I gotta definitely go back to being prepared.
Do like Big Mama did, and put it under the mattress or put it in the mattress, and then
that's where I went to get it from.
Get a knife, cut it open.
Right. You gotta have flashlights at home. You gotta make sure you know what that is.
Candles.
Right.
That's why we always talk about emergency kits.
Exactly.
Marcus Allen mentioned restaurants, and you said you were at Como's. How busy was that restaurant?
Well, because it wasn't a lot of, they have tiki lamps and stuff that run the perimeter of it. So it was like light in the dark. And because that sits on woodwork, so you still had cars going by with their headlights. So it was actually almost, I don't want to say it was normal, but it was the most normal looking place out of, as soon as you take a block to the east and west, it's completely dark. And they had their fire going, doing the pizzas. And I'm assuming what it was is, they, like Alan said, you were throwing food out. You can only keep it for so long. And you got to imagine they were up for the day. They were ready to do business. And they're like, look, we're just going to keep making this stuff till it runs out. And we went there and we talked to people. And people came from the neighborhood and they came to Como's. And it became almost a little hub in the midst of all of that. And, and I remember going home and I had, because when you're working, you don't really eat because you're too busy working. And I'm going home and I got this pizza and it was the best tasting pizza ever. And it was cold too, but it was the best tasting pizza because the whole day was complete and utter chaos. And that was just a little bit of comfort.
Right. And you also realize how many people don't know how to drive when the power is out. Yeah. Stoplights, no, you don't have the right of way. 6 cars don't go right now. It's like a stop sign now. You go once, this guy goes, that guy goes. People just totally. So that's another headache.
And we're surrounded by our pond. We have this thing with the deer. The deer were coming out of 9 Mile. I mean, it's completely dark now, and it's like you had to be careful. I mean, it was like twice I almost hit deer just because it's like I couldn't make them out until I was right on them. And that was just coming back to the station. It was completely crazy. So
it was crazy for you guys. It was crazy for DTE, crazy for Metro Airport. You had flights that were delayed, flights that were canceled. In the beginning, I mentioned that this was really all because a tree brushed up against a high power velocity line. In the Cleveland area, from the reports that I've read, it was 87 degrees, no wind, and there was no indication of what was going to happen until that afternoon. Describe the day leading up to the power outage. Was it you were at work, you were going with your son? Was this just like hey, it's a normal summer weekend day?
It was hot and humid.
Yeah.
But here in the station it was climate controlled. And because we have so many things that draw heat because of all of our machines and everything, our transmitter and everything, you lose air for an hour, and it's like a sauna in here. Right. And so now you can't flush toilets. You can't do any of that stuff. So immediately it got bad kind of quick. But I shouldn't say this because a friend of mine is a federal agent. I'm not going to say which agency, but he told me that they heard traffic coming out. The power guys were talking. And in their transmission, you could hear they didn't know what the computers were doing. They were seeing, these are guys who deal with megawatts of power every day, all day, and you can hear the chatter. They're just chattering with each other about, oh my, oh goodness, oh goodness. I mean, the whole Eastern Seaboard. From a tree.
Did this feel like you guys were in a movie, or?
We didn't know at that time, did we? We didn't know about the tree.
Right. I don't think we knew about the right. We didn't know. We didn't know what caused it. But like you said, you kind of like, okay, is this more serious than? Is this an attack on our cyber system? Or how long is this going to last? I felt guilty when we got to Chicago because we were having a blast. We want to go to restaurants. Where do you want to go eat some? And I go, we got to call Mom and see how things are going back in the dark. And she goes, honey, you want us to turn around? She goes, no, you guys keep having fun. You enjoy yourself. There's no reason to come back. Yes, the power's still out. And I'm gonna be fine. I'm making it. And I'm like, all right. So you look at that and you go like, oh, come it's just there? And why is it? But you don't know how long that's going to last. And that was the crazy part.
Here, man, if you knew somebody who could charge your cell phone in the car, I mean, you had whole neighbors coming out. Can I charge your phone? But there's a good thing. I bought a portable generator. It's a solar generator.
Because of that?
Because of that. Wow. It has solar panels on it, so you can charge during the day. It has passive technologies where you can actually power things while it's recharging itself.
You still have it?
I bought it just because of that.
How often have you used it?
Only twice. Only twice here. Only twice. Thank God. I don't want to have to use it, but it's better to be prepared. I'm so much more prepared now after going through that.
Speaking of generators, hospitals had to use backup generators as well. You had a lot of other businesses doing the same. But when the lights really started to come back on, and no pun intended, but people start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. How would you describe the emotions of people of having to have gone through 24, 36, maybe in some cases 48 hours of like total darkness?
Well, the power came back on and you heard the
right.
of all of the stuff in your house all of a sudden turning on. And it wasn't full power at first. It was brown at first because it hadn't geared all the way up. But it was all of a sudden now the first thing you're thinking is, I could charge my phone.
right.
And I come to the station. I mean, the station was really good about it because we were working, and I came here and charged my phones and went back home and came back home and got my phone. Like, by that time, it was about like 3 or 4 o'clock, something like that in the afternoon. So, it started to come back on, and it was like it was the greatest feeling ever, man. You just think about all the food you're gonna eat.
Right. that and the fact that the air conditioner's back on, cool down that, cool your house back down. You can actually shut the windows again and start to feel comfortable again. But you start to go like, okay, now I gotta, like I said, the sad thing about it is like, now I gotta go back and buy everything again and put in the refrigerator. We need food again. You had to wait because most of the grocery stores now are empty anyway. Even when the power came back on, they're not prepared to restock the shelves. So you ate out a lot. You went to every fast food if they had food because they had the same. They didn't have, so they had
pack
to restock
that jerky. Beef jerky,
right?
Because you love beef jerky,
right? So but it was relief to finally get back, and then of course you're like, okay, how do we prevent this from ever happening again to this extent? You have to put your trust in people that they know what they're doing. But it was an interesting time.
A little over a day. And it felt like a week. And then we hear stories. We cover stuff where people have lost power, and it's like a week or so.
Right. A real week.
Yes. That is. I couldn't imagine that.
We talked about, I think the conversation was reliability, on behalf of these power providers. For people who are listening, may not be as familiar with the news, describe, what happened. So you have this blackout, you have the fallout. What comes after? For journalists like yourselves, what comes after? What are the stories that you guys search for following a blackout like this, of this magnitude?
For us, it was about people who didn't have things to really fall back on, the elderly, checking on those homes, especially high-rise situations where the elevators went out. That's one of the things we were checking on. Where were people stuck in the elevator in the Fisher building? And so you're trying to go cover that story, but you got to walk up all those stairs. So then you start thinking about, we got these senior high-rises where it's 80-something degrees outside, and that's not even counting what it is in that building. Do they have water? Are they alive? Has anybody checked on them? So it was a lot of people trying to take account for people who hadn't heard from because you couldn't call anybody. Yeah,
unfortunately, there were 100 deaths that were or blamed on this blackout here. Do you guys think that if a blackout of that magnitude happened now in 2025, would Metro Detroit, would the country be better equipped to handle it more so than they did 22 years ago?
I would say no.
Why is that?
Because we are so much more dependent on our phones.
Yeah.
Your phone isn't just a phone anymore. It's your banking, it's your everything in that phone.
And cell phones back then were basically, texting, I don't think it existed.
Well, we
take photos.
We were, but we weren't living by it. I mean, right now it's your access to, your banking, your everything on this phone. But
contacts, everything.
But did we learn lessons? Did we?
We got worse.
Because I think you have to realize that in the midst of chaos, what we do is we're going to try to inform the public as long as we can in the midst of that. But at the same time, you have to have things set up for your family. And only you can dictate what that is. You can't wait until something bad happens. You got to have a plan. Like one thing I talk to my family about is, well, if we had to leave the metro area and get out of here, how do you know how to get out of here without being on freeways? Do you know the main trunk lines? Do you know how to, there are things you have to talk about. Or do we have a rally point set up? Right. What happens if we can't talk? You have kids in college or people gone. Or how do you get in contact with those people? I physically, when I bought that little generator, I said, because I can put that thing in a car and go out to the sticks and have power. But that's something I did. But did we do something as a populace? I don't think so.
Because now people are on their phone so much, they'll lose their mind with that. I got 12%.
Yes.
What am I going to do?
Right.
Yes. And if you lose data, because you don't have Wi-Fi once power goes out, so, this generation of, it's totally dark. And you go like, I can't post this. Mm-hmm. What? Mm-hmm. What? Mm-hmm. Can you got any bars? Can I? They'll lose their mind right now. Going out, can't play video. I can't play my PS5.
Well, you see what happens when Instagram or Meta or TikTok has had a shortage and people can't upload things. It becomes a news story.
Right. I've always liked the idea that one day out of the year we should just let's go old school.
Put it down.
Just put it down. Everybody, as a phone company, should just go, this is the one day out of the year we shut everything down.
Yeah.
So you won't have access to your phones. I heard this the other day on the radio. Somebody was talking about this. Growing up was so different. Like, I remember when I was growing up, you used to be away from the house 10, 11 hours in a day. Your parents had no idea where you were.
No phones.
No phones. Had no idea how to get in touch with you. You just would show back up home. 10 hours later before the streetlights came on. Now it's like, I'm tracking you. I know exactly where you are. You better text me and call me. It's a totally different environment. People would lose their mind.
Alan, I got to ask you this before we wrap things up. What was a more rewarding feeling? Surviving this blackout or surviving your first earthquake when you moved out to the West Coast?
Well, because it wasn't a major earthquake.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. I'm not gonna lie to you.
He was screaming.
It's kind of fun because I have dogs. I had dogs back then. I have one dog now. The dogs kind of know also a little bit right before, because they start acting a little like they're all of a sudden they're in your room like, what is wrong with you? Then you're just sitting there and you're like, did stuff just move? Was that a then you turn on the news, you're like, we just had an earthquake. So that was what I felt. So they were all kind of mild. But like I said, it was more like, okay, that's all right. I'm not scared, but, it was a mild one. But
that major earthquake hit different, though.
Like a major one, that would hit different. So the blackout, I think that was because, like I said, if you had a major earthquake, that's going to hit different because that's permanent possibility of damage and you got structural situation. So that always is a potential of being a whole lot worse than just the power being out. You're going to survive the power being out. Mm-hmm. You may not like it. It's a huge inconvenience. Your life's going to change for a few hours or maybe a couple of days, but you're eventually, hopefully, going to get power back. It's not going to be that big of an ordeal. It's just a nuisance.
The earthquake was his comeuppance because Alan takes every opportunity after they moved to California, to go on Facebook and remind you, I don't own boots anymore. Is it snowing there?
I will admit there were a couple of beach moments.
Constant.
Right.
It was like, that's what you get.
I was just about to say, I am surprised we made it through the whole half hour without you two cracking jokes and your mama jokes on each other. But we made it 28 minutes in.
There you go.
So
when we get off of here, it'll start back.
Yeah.
Marcus,
this is my man.
This is my guy too.
Look,
been here for a long time.
I'm blessed to work with this man for so many years, and we're blessed to have his wife still here. So this is family.
Yeah. It is family. He is one of those people, man, that you can always he's old school in that regard. You can have fun with him, and he doesn't take it personally, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm. Hey, look, I appreciate it, guys. Alan, Marcus, thank you so much for sharing stories.
Thank you
for sharing with our viewers. Like I said, you can catch this on our Fox Local streaming app. You can catch it on YouTube. We're going to upload a link for you from the TV-2 archives. You got something?
Yeah, I do, because I have a question.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this either, but as guests on the show today, do we get like a free blazer or a free?
I mean, I can.
We're gonna be at Fashion International in a
Right,
minute.
let me talk to my plug. Let me talk to my plug.
Telling tales out of school.
See what I can help you guys out with.
Free vest.
Wait for Marcus.
Talk about me talking about my shop. He's got an Instagram page now where he's changing clothes.
Right.
I'm like,
I gotta look good,
So
man.
fresh and so
I gotta
clean.
look good. It's a Detroit. If you don't look good, Detroit will let you know, man.
Yeah,
so
right.
yeah. Look for Alan, for Marcus, I'm Brandon Hudson. Thank you for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Good night.